Hello and welcome to the BA Brew. I'm Mike.
I'm Wouter.
And I'm Jonathan.
Today we're talking about business analysis and business architecture and perhaps some of the features of those two disciplines, which there's some overlaps and all sorts of things. But I think probably to start with, it's worth possibly explaining to our audience what the difference is between business architecture and business analysis. Which of you would like to start the ball rolling with that? Shall I go to Wouter? Would you like to start with that? That gives probably a chance to make something up afterwards, you see.
I've got some thinking time, haven't I?
Yeah, that's it.
Use it well. Business architecture, that's a discipline looking at the mission and vision of the organization, translating that to strategy and pointing out where to go, what to develop, what capabilities are needed, etc. So they are connecting points and making boundaries for the organization, while the business analyst is looking at part of the architecture and other questions from the stakeholders and trying to create what's maximum value for the customer between the boundaries and in line with the architecture. I think that's, in short, the difference and the overlap between those two.
So I'm pleased I had some thinking time. Thanks for that, Wouter. Mike. So yeah, I'd agree with the way that you've described them, and I would, the way I think about them is that the business architect has an organizational focus, what's best for the organization, the vision, the mission, the strategy, and the business analyst tends to have either a product, service, or a project focus. So the business analyst is slightly more detailed, whereas the business architect has a broader horizon and a broader view. And I'm going to go geeky. I use Zachman to help me think about what is the role of the business architect versus the business analyst. And what the Zachman framework does is it talks about layers of detail. And the top one is contextual, and then it goes to conceptual, logical, then physical, detailed. And so when I think about, well, where is the business architect? Well, the business architect is up there at the contextual layer, the senior leaders of the organization, the direction of travel for the organization. Also looking at the concepts, particularly concepts around value streams, capabilities, information concepts, and such like. And then there's like a handover. They pass the baton a little bit down into the logical and the detailed layer into where business analysis fits. But that's why I use Zachman's framework as a paradigm to help me think through at what level of detail is it that the business analyst is working versus the business architect. And there's different views on it. That's my 2 pennies. Mike?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Using Zachman, it sounds like you've got a nice, straightforward transition between the business architect and the business analyst, and I'm not sure that's as straightforward as that. So yeah, great. You had your bit of thinking time, but I think we need to explore that a bit further, because I think there's a more of a grey area there, and I don't know what you think about that, Wouter.
Definitely, when you translate it to the why, that's definitely architecture. But as business analyst, I'm always thinking about the why as well. So there you have to find the synergy between the two roles and the why. Then comes the what. What are we going to do? That's as well architecture, the why and what are we going to do. And the how, well, that's our job as analysts, and less for the architect. So there's a shifting scale where we overlap and where we think alike, but have our differences.
That difference of where is the overlap, who's doing what, and the different views, because each business analyst and each business architect and the teams around them seem to have different views as to how they should or shouldn't work together. And one of the challenges I think related to this discipline and these two disciplines is how can we engender collaboration so that we are focused on what it is that the business wants to achieve, business outcomes, and to improve the knowledge sharing, the collaboration, and outcome focus between the two respective disciplines. And I think that there is a bit of confusion out there, and there's a lot of variance in terms of who's doing what, and those types of arguments in between the teams of BAs, business analysts, and business architects, not necessarily helpful for the business outcomes.
Yeah, it sounds, that collaboration thing I think is key, isn't it? Because if you've got those differences or different perceptions of the boundaries, you've got a couple of different situations that can occur. You could either have a gap because neither the business analyst or the business architect is covering it because they think somebody else, the other person is, or you've got some overlap. And if you've got that overlap, there's potential there for contention unless you're actually working together.
Yeah.
How do we ensure that collaboration?
I'm going to throw something in. The original definition of business architecture, according to the Business Architecture Guild, talks about the provision of blueprints to enable common understanding for the alignment of strategic and tactical decision making. So business architecture is about providing common understanding through blueprints. And I think business analysis contributes towards those blueprints. But one of the things we can do in these respective disciplines is use our own tools to help us define what we do and how we do it. So we've got there's a huge overlapping tool set between these disciplines. Well, we should be choosing tools from our tool set to help us to understand the respective roles and where the handovers are between our colleagues that are working with us. The other thing I'm going to throw in is that a business analyst can perform business architecture related activities and produce outputs that might be seen to be a business architecture output, and that a business architect can also do some of the business analysis work on occasion, so that one individual can perform both roles. You don't need permission to pick up a capability map and use it to help you with your thinking if you're a business analyst, for example. I'm just throwing way too many things there. I need to be quiet.
Yeah, you've given us lots of thinking time. So.
Loads of thinking time for you.
I think the size of the company and the profession of the company makes a difference. Where I'm working at the moment, it's a big company, and you have strict, well, not that strict anymore, but there were strict boundaries between this is what the architect does and this is what the business analyst is doing. And in the old way, the waterfall way, it was really clear. And now we're working more and more agile in shorter periods to create products. And we see that we're connecting more and helping each other more, because I need some input from the architect, and the architect needs some input from the analyst. So the boundaries are not that clear anymore, and co-creation of various products. For instance, the project start architecture, I'm working on that as well. It's not just the architect. And when I'm making the overall planning, the architect is working on that as well, together with me. So we are still responsible for our product, but we're working very close together to make sure we have just in time, just enough information for the agile team to work with.
That sounds really positive, Wouter, in terms of working together to achieve the outcomes. And I think, business analysts, business architects should be doing that more often. That should be the standard way of working. But all too often I come across stories of business analysts that know of in their organization business architects, and they're either unwilling or unable to go and speak with the business architect. And I think it's more unwillingness to, and there seems to be a bit of a fear to go and say hello and introduce yourself, and to start a conversation about how we can work together. And I'd hope that's very much in the minority, because I think most business analysts will be confident enough to go and say hello to someone who's a fellow professional, who quite a lot, on a lot of occasions might have been a business analyst in a former role, because quite often you see business analysts progress or move into business architecture roles. And that they should be sharing knowledge, sharing information, and working together in the way that you described, I think, Wouter.
Yes, I hope it will become common to work that way together, but it depends on the organization and how they organize those roles. And I really enjoy the co-production, the co-creation of products, and I hope to have more of that.
I think we can encourage business analysts and business architects who are watching this to just go and find each other and talk, because actually yeah, don't wait for somebody else to give you permission to talk. You have some shared values. You're doing similar things for the good of the organization. So yeah, seek each other out.
And we have
Often using similar skill sets and using similar tools as well. The process lens, for example, the business architect's very comfortable with, as is the business analyst, and it's one of the example blueprints you can use to share your understanding to help achieve the organization's outcomes. The skills, so I don't know, what are the skills of a business architect or business analyst, and where's the overlap there?
One of the important things is both have to be analytic. You have to understand the problems and make them clear, and know how to ask the stakeholders, which are the same for most of the time for both the roles, why, etc. And you have to know how to communicate with different levels. You already talked about tooling. An enterprise architect tool is used, but sometimes Visio or just simple PowerPoint would be enough. So you have to know how to level with the stakeholder you're talking with. And both roles have to do that. So that's, for example, one example.
I think quite a lot of negotiation skills needed and influencing skills, particularly for the business architect. In addition, so I think the business analyst needs those skills as well, but the business architect quite often doesn't have any formal responsibility for design of a business area. The business decisions sit with the business, and the business architect's kind of helping business decision makers to make informed decisions about how best to architect the business. And it's I think softer influencing skills are really key in particularly the business architecture role, to try and influence the outcomes in a positive way across what can be quite complex product or project portfolios with many different stakeholders, and they're also trying to communicate with others as well.
That sounds to me like that's a great opportunity there if the BAs can get together with the business architects, because if the business architects have already got the ear of senior members of the organization and have those influencing skills, actually that combination can be really powerful, can't it? And you can achieve much more. Interesting. What other opportunities have we got around this then? What other things can we think of?
I think knowledge share. So the business analyst might be doing the detailed work in the project or aligned with the product or service, and they're creating blueprints and updating blueprints that can help the business architect have a more informed view of what are the outputs and outcomes from the projects. And so there's if the business analyst is sharing to the business architects and vice versa, they're helping each other to make informed decisions about where the projects are heading to. So there's a huge opportunity there to build the knowledge bases, but to continue kind of to refine them through the change work that we do. And I think that's a big opportunity for these two disciplines as well. I'm sure there are others.
The other way around as well. The architect is looking from a higher level and has a wider view, sometimes up to 5 or 10 years in the future from where are we going. And most of the time in the project I'm running, we are not looking farther than 3-4 years. Knowing what the plans are, what the future plans are, before so far we can set them, fix them, can help me as well in making some decisions. So that's and the other way around, as you described, from bottom up, from what do we see, what do we hear from the production area or the customers, back to the architects. That's great.
I think the customer perspective and trying to both disciplines being more customer centric in their approaches and taking an outside in view and helping each other to consider the impact on the customer. A little bit, I think one of the other opportunities is innovation. How can we use this knowledge not for the sake of having an updated process or capability model, but for how do we leverage capabilities? How do we enhance the processes for the benefit of our customers, for the benefit of the organization? I think there's probably quite a lot of development there in terms of how do we move on the discussions to not just to build the initial relationships and start sharing knowledge, but then how do we leverage that to enhance the value proposition of the organization overall? I think this is easier in the smaller organizations, but if you've got a large bureaucratic organization, that can be quite challenging. You've got different departments that maybe different silos aren't necessarily working together as well as they might. But that's an opportunity for this type of collaboration that I think we're talking about here.
Yeah, I was thinking around that actually maybe there's opportunities there for the business analyst to use the business architect as a sort of independent critical friend. So
yes.
when you're focused on a project, all of the people on the project are looking in on that project, and sometimes as the BA you look out and try and step back from it and say, actually, is that quite right? And talking to the people in the project, you might not be able to explore that as thoroughly as if you could with the business architect who's slightly removed but still got the overall aims of the organization or the values of the organization in mind there. So that might be another thing.
Business architect don't always sit in an enterprise architecture team, but can sit inside an enterprise architecture team, and that relationship that business architect might have with data architects or applications architects or platform architects and or infrastructure architects, that's a source of knowledge and help that the business architect can draw for the business analyst on request, potentially as well, and help the business analyst build those relationships with those parties of the other kind of enterprise architecture professionals as well. And I kind of see I think I struggle with the word symbiotic. It's kind of, they should be helping each other, sharing this knowledge, not just within these two disciplines, but across those other architecture disciplines as well.
Just a slight sort of stepping back from that slightly, often I talk with other BAs who are interested in becoming or getting into business architecture or becoming a business architect. Is there a natural progression? Is there a way of achieving that as a business analyst moving into business architecture?
It's a common path. You see quite a lot of architects, at least in the organization I've been working with, who were analysts at first and wanting to get a better view for the organization and taking their skills along with them. But then in the Netherlands, at least, they always ask for a TOGAF certification. When you have that, then you're an architect. So that would be my advice to make sure you
other frameworks are available. Other frameworks are available. Just have to say that for our other viewers and listeners. Of course, we're not going to mention them, are we? But just TOGAF for now.
We've mentioned Zachman, we've mentioned the guild, so we're covering a few. That bit of advice to go and study TOGAF at the Open Group Architecture Framework. You can go on to the TOGAF website and it's open group, so they put the information out for free. You can get things like quick reference guides, handbooks to TOGAF. It's a method, and it's one of the available methods, one of the frameworks that you can use for enterprise architecture. But and I'll speak as someone that did go and do their TOGAF certification at the start of my business architecture journey, and I can assure you it didn't help me to perform business architecture. But I'll also share, I really am a fan of TOGAF. It's a very logical approach for how you do change to your architecture. Brilliant. Current state, target state, goes through the layers. It's got governance. It's brilliant. But it didn't, and no kind of training course on its own can do this, can teach you how to do your job in entirety. So I did TOGAF, but I learnt how to do and how to do business architect, how to be a business architect by doing the job. I had some great mentors, some great coaches. I explored, I made mistakes, I learned from those mistakes. But I think the one thing I'd say is have a business focus. Don't forget the business case. Because if you haven't got a business case for your architectural change or your transformation program, then why are you doing it? But it's kind of, there's a broad tool set. There's capability models you can go and learn about, value streams, information concept models we talked about already. thinking about organizational design and target operating models. There's a huge raft of different things you can go and learn about. I'll give a shout out to Lean as well, Lean and systems thinking, even design thinking in some instances. But kind of there's a huge tool set that overlaps for both of these two roles, and I think it would be unfair to say that TOGAF could teach you all of that, because it can't, and it's not intended to either. But it's a really good framework to go and learn about and explore as well.
But anybody who's looking for a role in business architecture in the Netherlands, obviously TOGAF, get that one sorted. You need the other stuff as well, but get that one sorted. Okay.
Make sure you get the opportunity to co-create with an architect on different projects.
Yeah.
So you can learn on the job, as you say. That's the best way to make sure you get the miles in before you officially become an architect, because you can show, I created this and I worked on that, and that will help it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're running short of time now, guys, I'm afraid. So I'd just like you to share your last pearls of wisdom about business analysis and business architecture, probably more business architecture, actually, because we talk about business analysis too much, don't we, Jonathan?
Yeah, we do. I'll share a pearl of wisdom. If you're a business analyst and you want to explore the business architecture toolkit, beg forgiveness, don't ask permission. Just pick it up and use the toolkit. You don't need to ask permission to think about capabilities or value streams. That'll be my pearl of wisdom, or thought for the day.
I would say that the architect has a vision, but make sure you have a discussion about that vision, because it's just from one or a few people, and that might not be the same as your own vision. And when you have a discussion, you learn the most. So try to find that.
Brilliant.
Right. Okay, and my nugget is just take notice of what Jonathan and Wouter have said. I've got nothing else. Okay, well, thanks for joining us, everybody. If you do have any ideas for a future BA Brew, then please drop us an email at babrew@assistkd.com. Thanks again, and see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.